Thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you, Mr. Sung, for your speech. Super high-rise buildings are a necessary part of high-density cities. So what I'm going to talk about today is the way that we need to re-examine what a super high-rise building is within the context of a high-density city. Now, urban population growth has increased by 4 times in the last 5 years. So high-density cities are the way that we can accommodate urbanization. They're good, they use land sustainably, compactly, and they're a proven model. But when we look across the world at density, we find that the older cities, density is about 1/4 of high-density cities in Asia. So even New York, Manhattan, only has a density of 18,000 people per square kilometer, whereas when we look at Asian cities, we are exceeding 20,000 persons per square kilometer, even up to 30,000 persons per square kilometer. But what does a normal Western city look like? At these densities, we're talking around 5,000 persons per kilometer. The city is necessarily low-rise, but more importantly, the infrastructure, the roadways, are very, very fine urban grain. And the city is defined by the space held within the infrastructure, within the roadway. But when we look at a high-density city, the space of the infrastructure is no longer comprehensible space. It no longer knits our city together, as in a low-density city, but it actually breaks the city apart, leading to difficulties in pedestrian circulation and difficulties of movement. The city becomes disaggregated. And this is a problem we find with all high-density cities. No one has solved this problem yet, not at the planning level or the building design level. For China, this is important because China is urbanizing 4 times faster than anywhere else in the world. Already, China has urbanized beyond 50%, and the rate of urbanization continues. China is developing a model where its population will live in megapolises. Already, the 4 large megapolises of China contain 40% of China's population and contribute more than half of China's economy. And this is unique. This does not exist anywhere else in the world. Going back to basics, when we build a city, it's irrigated by an infrastructure of roads and subway systems above and below ground. As a city urbanizes, we must be very careful how we load up that infrastructure. If we densify the entire city ubiquitously and evenly, then we will not be able to improve the infrastructure and the net will break. So we need to examine the infrastructure net very carefully to discover where it is strongest. At the intersections of major roadways, at the intersections of subway systems, is where the infrastructure grid is strong. And this is where we need to place super high density. In the top diagram, you will see that if we ubiquitously densify, then some people will be a long way away from subway stations and will have a long journey to work. This will lead to pollution in the city. Whilst if we look at the second diagram, if we super densify over our transportation hubs, then people have shorter journey to work and we will create a mix within the city of super high density and normal density with open space between those areas. We can even predict where what I call city hubs would occur. The old diagram has been a CBD, a business district, and then a ubiquitous densification around that business district. I advocate that we need to create super high density in hubs around the CBD. And every city in China, we can predict where those super high density hubs will occur. And this is an exercise we just did for Shenzhen. And you will see that every one of these hubs is already forming, is already occurring. Whether we like it or not, it's happening. And so we need to pay attention to how do we create these hubs? What are the buildings that we're going to put into these hubs? The old model of a CBD commercial hub no longer fits. We all need a live-work model. We need to live close to our work. We need to recreate close to our work. We need to shorten our journey times. The new city hub is an integrated model of live and work. This is an example in Quarry Bay in Hong Kong, and here in the Futian district in Shenzhen, where inevitably, and particularly with a high-speed rail link, this district will become a super high-density city hub. High density requires more public space. If the street was enough for a normal Western city of 5,000 people per square kilometer, then the street cannot, by definition, be enough for a city which is 5 times that density. Logically, we need 5 times as much public space. That means that we must provide that public space on different levels, not just the street, but underground, the first floor, second floor. And that should not just be connective public space, not just streets, but also parks in the sky, recreational space, and so on. And so I advocate that the city model changes. What we're going to get is, instead of a series of towers coming down to ground, irrigated by roads, the towers will become more porous, more open, more connected by sky bridges and subway systems. And the lower levels of the towers will be full of public functions. We will experience public rooftops, public podiums, elevated parks in the sky, and all of these things are already happening throughout Asia. Public connectors, such as the skyline in New York. Wide and capacious subways that connect up between our transit systems. And the model of buildings will completely change. We will no longer see independent buildings coming down to ground, but the buildings will become mixed use and aggregated into a system of connectivity. These are the images of buildings that we are currently creating throughout China. And this model of building is unique to China. It does not exist anywhere in the world. It's addressing China's needs of high-density cities. Multi-layered public space. Networks of pedestrian routes. And this is Tianhai, just a couple of kilometers away. High porosity of the lower levels of buildings so that public have lots of space. Seamless connection between the tower and the podium. So the tower is no longer a fortress. The bottom of a tower is something that integrates into the lower levels. All of this providing easier and more direct access to our city. I'm going to go through a few case studies now of buildings that are actually under construction. So these are real, and they're all in China. First in Chongqing in Jifangbei. In the heart of Chongqing, in a very, very highly populated area. It's a mixed-use building. It's a vertical connected tower. Retail, bookstore, 8 levels of entertainment, office, surmounted by residential. Jifangbei is very crowded, so we bring people up from the street by a series of 3 5-story escalators, creating public space at level 6, level 10, and throughout from level 12 to level 15. These are the entertainment areas above the bookstore at the level 10 to 15. You can see the sheer amount of public space this building creates. Final case study is from Zhuhai, from Hengqin. And this is in the business district of Zhuhai. Once again, mixed use, office, retail, entertainment. In these towers, 4 towers, we've connected them by sky gardens. So we have 2 areas of public connectivity, one in the lower 5 floors and the other one in the upper 20th floors. Lower floors have much public space open to the sky and also connected at the upper levels. So much more simple development, but once again indicating this need to look at super high-rise as a connective tissue in our cities. Thank you very much.